This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 389 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Saturday's game against Bayer Leverkusen. And that's pretty much it, since we will have a dedicated Besiktas preview coming out on Monday. So, strap in. It's just me here alongside Eric from the Neverkusen Podcast. Hello, Eric. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Stefan. It's a pleasure to be here and great to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Matthias Zug was supposed to join us as well, but he had a surprise visit by contractors today at his house. So apparently there's so much noise going on right now that he cannot join. So Eric, I'm afraid it's only me you will have to deal with now. But nevertheless, I think we can both quite look forward to what will be a very exciting game. Leverkusen against Dortmund always is. I mean, Bayer Leverkusen certainly had a really good start to the Bundesliga season. 1-1 draw against Union Berlin, but then 4-0 shellacking of Borussia Mönchengladbach, who just thought they had a good start themselves with this draw that they almost won against Bayern Munich. And then you guys had a quite hilarious 4-1 win against FC Augsburg, where the first 3 goals in that particular match, if I remember correctly, were all hilarious. The first 2, I think, by Augsburg were own goals, and then Leverkusen sort of bungled completely another one, which led to an Augsburg goal. So of course, Leverkusen are also a team that has a new coach with Gerardo Soyane, I think is how you pronounce it. Eric, correct me if I'm wrong. So, first things first, how is the new Bundesliga season treating you? How are things going on in the old Rhineland?
Well, I'm a long distance away from the Rhineland, but I'm in communication with several people, obviously, who are there, other fans, and obviously Neverkusen Pod colleagues. And
you're on the West Coast, right?
Yes, I'm in Los Angeles. Exactly. Right. So we're talking across the country to one another, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's correct. Yes, I'm in Philly. You're in.
All right. The season has started out incredibly well, obviously. The 1-1 draw against Union was maybe a small disappointment, but Leverkusen played that match fairly well, so I don't think there was any reason for fans to get down after the first match. And then, as you say, the Gladbach match was a pleasure to watch, and as I mentioned on our podcast last week, it was physically a real shellacking as well. Leverkusen and Gladbach ended up with, I think, 4 players having to leave the match. I'm not a proponent here of dirty play, but it was in all ways a convincing victory. Let me just say that. And then, the Augsburg match, some of the best own goals I've seen in my lifetime from Augsburg. And then, a somewhat silly goal by Bayer Leverkusen. But I think throughout it all, you have seen that this is a slightly different team from last year's Leverkusen, a bit more stable in the back. I think a little more able to employ the wingers effectively. And a lot of it has to do also, I would have to say, with the confidence of Patrick Schick, who's coming back from the Euros, obviously in excellent form.
Yeah. Obviously, Patrick Schick, was he the top scorer in the end of the Euros, or did he sort of equal the record from Ronaldo or something like that, right? But
I believe he did get the Golden Boot, yes.
Yeah, but he was doing extremely well. It's obviously very fortunate for you guys that this form did carry over, because it's nothing you can take for granted, to be honest. Dortmund fans, I think, would appreciate if Thomas Meunier would play a little bit more like he does for Belgium, even though I must always say that his games for Belgium are not that impressive either, but it's usually much better than what he's showing in the Dortmund dress, that's for sure. So yeah, right now, obviously, your top 2 goal scorers are Moussa Diaby and Patrick Schick, both 2 goals apiece. And then, of course, Amiri has scored 1 and Florian Wirtz, of course, also 1. I think Wirtz right now also has 2 assists to his name, right? So it's going quite well. Obviously, Leverkusen, as per usual, have a very strong squad. What are the transfers that Leverkusen made or didn't make through this summer that are noteworthy?
Yeah, and before I answer that, I just want to know, I looked it up. Ronaldo did get the golden boot in the end, but yeah, it was right there on his heels was Schick. So the transfers, Leverkusen had, first of all, a couple of important players who left, and that included Leon Bailey, who went to Aston Villa, Vandel, who you could argue about his effectiveness, but had been with the club for quite some time, went to Porto. Obviously, the 2 biggest losses were the Bender twins, and certainly I'm sure there's some sympathy from your listeners with regards to at least one of the Benders. That's obviously a really difficult loss. I remember how Dortmund fans reacted when Sven left, and this is having both of them, having a Sven and Lars leaving us, and then also having Sven leave. That's such a almost, there could be a crisis of leadership there with 2 real leaders like that leaving. And that was kind of a concern going into the new season. As far as the transfer market, as far as players coming in, I think Bayer Leverkusen did a really good piece of business. The first player to come, or one of the first players to come, was Kasonu, who's now playing at center back for us immediately, 20 years old. Once Edmund Tapsoba is better, hopefully we'll see a young duo, those 2 as our center backs. Someone who's really impressed recently is Mitchell Bakker, who came from PSG. And tomorrow, I think, will be his first real test. He's been impressive going forward. I think tomorrow he's going to be asked or relied on to defend probably a little more. Another key player, I think, for tomorrow's match, for Saturday's match, pardon me.
I mean, for the listeners, it might be tomorrow, so I'm not going to correct you. Robert Andrich came from Union Berlin, and he's going to be another key figure in the match against Dortmund. It's partly because we're missing some central defensive mids. It's also in part because obviously going up against Dortmund, going up against Haaland, you're going to want some physicality, I think, in the center of the pitch there. And I think a large part of his role, Seoane has hinted at this, a large part of his role is going to be that physical nature. A couple of other players, Piero Hincapie, won't be able to play tomorrow. A big get for us was Amin Adli. Actually, who I think came on for the first time last week, and you may see towards the end of the match against Dortmund. So I think a good piece of business. Not big on flashy names or in any way, but I think they did a good job of kind of solidifying some of the weaker areas. And it should be pointed out too, one of the January transfers, Jeremy Frimpong, who is right now playing the other fullback position opposite Bakker, has really been excellent this season thus far, both going forward and actually playing pretty well in the back. And both those fullbacks are going to have their real true test on match day. So we'll see. But very happy with what Leverkusen have done. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the transfer business on the old reliable called transfermarkt.de, you can see that Leverkusen did spend about 52 million, and I think they made about 42 million from the players they sold, including Bailey, I think the most prominent, and then of course Tenyetvai to Lok Moscow and Vendel to FC Porto, as you already mentioned. And I didn't even know that. How do you pronounce him? Kosunu?
Yep.
Yeah, that Leverkusen shelled out 23 million for him. And Adli, I think, should be a very interesting player because he comes from Toulouse, right? Ligue 2 team. And might be a good one because if there's one thing that Leverkusen scouts can always pull out is a good winger, I think. That's sort of their speciality, you know. I don't know about central midfielders, to be honest, but I mean, the Leverkusen youth has sort of helped in that regard with, Wirtz and so on. And I think Demirbay and Palacios and Arangis usually are okay players in midfield, but as you already mentioned, I think both can really make it, right? Or can Palacios make it? I feel like one of the three might actually make it, but it's not entirely sure yet. Like Palacios might make it in time, but Arangis and Hincapi, or however you Hincapi, I don't know how you pronounce them.
Hincapi, yeah. Both. It looks like both of them are going to be left behind for this match, so to speak. And that's a whole other podcast. But it sounds like yes, Palacios will be there, which will be potentially interesting in terms of what that might mean for the starting lineup. At this point, you would think that the central defensive midfield would probably be Demirbay, and Andrich is for sure playing. So probably Demirbay as well, potentially Amiri, and then Wirtz up front or towards the front in the middle, and Paulinho on the left. But if Palacios is able to play, then you can probably push Wirtz out to the wing. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that Seoane has that option at least, if not even to start, at least maybe as a sub. Palacios has been very consistent. He does a lot of the dirty work for Bayer Leverkusen, and kind of I think is overshadowed by much of the rest of the team. But he and Ranguis have certainly formed a pretty decent partnership this early in the season.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about how mean especially South American football can get, this is always a good dude to have. Now, obviously, you talked about the potential starting 11, but let's go back a little bit or add to that, however you want to see it, because you do have a new coach, Gerardo Soriano, who is a 42-year-old coach from Switzerland, Luzern to be exact, and he, of course, coached FC Luzern before, and then before joining Leverkusen, he coached Young Boys Bern, so those were the Swiss black and yellows, if you will. What's his coaching style? What is his signature or philosophy? I mean, Leverkusen's stint with Peter Bosch in the end did not end so pretty. You might want to elaborate on that. And then, of course, Hannes Wolf, of all people, took over. So, how did
guided us to safety?
Yeah. So how did this last season sort of end? What was the reason for Peter Bosch not working out at Leverkusen in the end? And then sort of just chronologically talk us through the new guy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think I think you know why Peter Bosch didn't work out in the end. That's it
might
not the
be
first
different
time.
reasons. I'm not that close to Leverkusen. I have a hunch it's similar, but still, let's hear it.
It's very close. And it's as you kind of indicated with Seoane, where you asked, what is his style? What is his philosophy? I think what really characterizes Seoane, at least differentiates him from maybe the previous trainers at Leverkusen, is it the fact that he seems to be quite flexible. And he came from Young Boys Bern, where they played primarily a 4-4-2, and immediately at Leverkusen, he's primarily with a 4-2-3-1. And it deviates a little bit, but that's always kind of how it starts. And it's clear throughout the matches as he's subbing, although sometimes he waits a little long, that he has a kind of an idea in mind. And obviously, it's to use Leverkusen's strengths on the wing and attack whenever possible. And he's shored up the defense as well. And we've seen in some matches that we're getting more defending from the wingers and other key players. And it's this kind of buying into playing a more complete maybe style of football. In the Seoane, typically he's not concerned with the ball possession that Peter Bosz was concerned with. And, once teams figured that out, there was pretty much nothing, there was no plan B. And right. that isn't really the case with Seoane. He's happy to counter. He's also happy to dictate the pace, but what he wants is efficiency when Leverkusen does have the ball. I was sorry to see Bosz go. I really did feel a lot of sympathy and warmth for the man. He's a completely likable dude. But it was very clear that the time had ended. It was very seemingly like a replay kind of how Roger Schmidt went out, minus the drubbing against you guys. But then Hannes Wolf came to steady the ship, and that's, basically all he did. There's, I don't think, anything to distinguish him as a trainer, really, other than, I don't know, being able to talk on a player's level to some extent, and just being, I guess, a steadying voice. But Leverkusen went out this summer, and they obviously took note of the shellacking, to use that word again, that Young Boys gave Leverkusen in the Europa League last year, and decided, they're going to pull like a Bayern Munich and just hire that coach away.
the old Bayern Munich trusted scouting system of whoever beats us will just sign.
Exactly. But it seems to, so far it seems to have worked. It's early days, obviously. But
it's the Hinrunde after all.
Yes, exactly. And last year's Hinrunde was an absolute pleasure until it all fell apart. So I know better than to be too optimistic, but it is really, it is fun to watch them right now, and it has a lot to do with him, the confidence he's instilled. It probably should be noted he speaks 6 languages, so he's literally able to talk to anybody on the team.
Pete Buttigieg of the Bundesliga.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. It seems like it's going to be a pretty good fit. I haven't heard too much from Rudi Völler or Simon Rolfes.
That's always recently. A positive sign, right? If those
that's
are
exactly what
staying away from the columns.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Völler, I think, was upset about the fact that players like Aranguiz and Hincapie are going to be left behind.
Yeah, as you would.
That's understandable, and it would be almost shocking if he didn't react to it. But as far as the team itself and its performances are concerned, there's been not a peep really. So, well, let's hope that continues.
Yeah, it very well might, because I'm not very optimistic about Borussia Dortmund's chances going in this, especially due to the injury malaise and obviously the rocky preseason overall that Dortmund had, because it was a lot of patchwork, let's be real. And we've talked a lot about Leverkusen right now, and I was comfortable in that, because that prevented me from rattling off the players that Dortmund are missing right now. I have written it down on Twitter in alphabetical order, starting with Emre Can, who has a muscle tear. And I think Marco Rose at today's news conference said that Emre Can definitely still needs a couple more days before he rejoins team training, so I don't expect him for a week or two. Then, of course, Thorgan Hazard still needs a few more days as well to recover from his ankle injury, which is a shame because Dortmund very much need him. Obviously, long-term injury of Moret and Zagadou we can sort of gloss over, same with Schmelzer. But then the news, I guess, coming out of the international break starts to sting a little more because Gio Reyna did not only underwhelm for the United States men's national team, as most players did until that 3-1 win against Honduras last night, because while Pulisic and co were already beating Honduras, Reyna was already on his way or already back in Germany with a muscle tear, and he's supposed to be missing about a month. So
Pulisic got hurt too, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it was a little rough out there. I'm watching the United States men's national team now sort of as my guilty pleasure. It's like with the new Schalke 04, since I can't watch Schalke that much anymore. I need the negativity and cannibalism on Twitter to go or to come from somewhere else. But unfortunately, they did win in the end. So boo me. But Reyna is out for a month at least, so that really stinks because Dortmund desperately need him. And of course, continuing to be out is Nico Schulz with, I think he had a muscle strain, so not that bad, but also still a couple of days until he re-enters team training. Steffen Tigges also picked up a muscle tear, so he'll be out for quite a considerable amount of time. I don't think he's a player Dortmund do want to rely on, and since all three strikers, if you count Malen, are fit, that should not be too much of a problem. But then it starts again in defense because Zagadou is still a long time away from being back with the team. I think Ruhrnachrichten reported today that he did some sort of training session without the ball, which is apparently better than the running training that he had beginning on Sunday. But, it's probably still a whole month for I don't know how many weeks until he'll be even an option. And then, of course, we'll have the eternal problem this season, which is Mats Hummels, because he has knee problems. He has been in team training for 2 days now, and he may play against Bayer Leverkusen because, of course, there is always the need for Hummels to be on the field, but I don't know how comfortable I would be with that. And then, of course, having scored for Germany, Marco Reus came home with a little boo-boo, also I think knee-related, so he missed that win against Iceland, but according to Rose, he should be able to play. And also questionable is Thomas Meunier, who is, I think he returned also with a muscular thing. I'm not entirely sure. I think it wasn't really specified, but he is also on the touch and go. And if he can play, then it would be Paslak again. So there are a lot of players and a lot of patchwork for Dortmund. And
I think, sorry to interrupt,
I'm
Stefan,
not done
but
yet.
I think
because Dortmund's new signing, Marin Pongracic, apparently has some back pain. If he's supposed to replace Hummels next to Akanji, then he might not be at 100%. But my assumption just is now that he should be in the squad. That little back pain should not deter him from playing. Anywho, go ahead. What did you want to say?
Yeah, sorry. No, that was a long list of excuses, injuries. I was just going to say, with regards to Meunier and Paslak, I mean, regardless, I think who's there, that's probably where a lot of the Leverkusen attack will.
Is it that obvious that this is our weak spot?
Yeah, as the rest of the league might also have instructed.
Well, what else are you training? Set pieces where you ping the ball to the front post, try to flick it onto the back post? What else are you telling me?
That's actually a really excellent question, because one thing we haven't done in years is practiced set pieces. And
I know, this is so crazy. Leverkusen, especially with the likes of, I don't know, Baumgartlinger and whatnot, you would always think that Leverkusen are just excellent at set pieces offensively and defensively, but just never quite the case, is it?
Yep, it's not practice. I mean, Bosch admitted as much. Like, he who was it, the national team trainer, didn't think it was all that important. But you leave points on the pitch, so to speak, when you think that philosophy. That's a long list of injuries, though. I'm just
seeing an article by Bild, so I don't know if I even want to cite that, but apparently Pongracic might actually start as a right back because he was sort of signed as a right back / center back. I mean, he is mostly a center back, but I've been told he can play in that position, so if Meunier can make it, he might start there, and then you have a center back pairing of Hummels and Akanji, and then next to him is, of course, Pongracic, and then on the other side it's good old Rafael Guerreiro, who will really pray that his muscle fibers will all hold together, because he is also injury prone and he hardly had a preseason. So this is sort of all all very scary to me, because I said on previous shows before that I think this season will be injury plagued from start to finish, and we're already hit pretty hard. So
is Julian Brandt then expected to get?
Yes.
Okay, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, basically this is the big chance for Julian Brandt, because Marco Rose pointed out today that Julian Brandt had an excellent preseason since he did not go to the Euros due to previous performance issues, and then he was sort of set back a little by a positive COVID test and had to quarantine for 2 weeks. But according to Rose, since he has trained really well in the recent 2 weeks, and when he did play in the games featuring as a substitute, he also did quite okay. I think this is a really big chance for him now that Reina is out for about a month and Torgen Hazard's touch and go. It's really the time for Julian Brandt to shine, just because he has to. I talked about it earlier on Twitter that maybe the old curse of the X can help him in that regard. I think he didn't he score before against Leverkusen?
Yes, and I'm sure Gonzalo Castro has too. Maybe not with Dortmund, but I think he did with Stuttgart. So yeah, the curse of the X is definitely something you need to be aware of.
Yeah,
don't have to believe in it, but you have to be aware of it.
Having someone on the show who obviously followed Julian Brandt quite closely when he did play for Leverkusen. What are you making of his sort of problematic stint, let's put it this way, at Borussia Dortmund right now?
It's usually the case that when a player leaves Leverkusen, especially for a rival like Dortmund, that they're kind of, dead to me, so to speak.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I haven't necessarily followed him closely. I do know he hasn't lived up to the promised form, the reason, why Dortmund bought him, which I will say gives me a slight measure of satisfaction. And,
sure.
I mean, yeah, Bayer Leverkusen is always, is always a little bit, is always at the mercy of certain clubs. Dortmund's one of them. And it's always clear that a player, especially a German player, might make that jump to the Ruhrpott at some point. But it's no less painful. And if you're a Leverkusen fan, you want someone like Julian Brandt to, I don't know, go to England, go out of the country. That's, then we'll, celebrate you. But he still has a lot of goodwill, and he was fantastic when he was at Leverkusen, and always, maybe not quite lived up to expectation, but was always one of the most exciting and certainly one of the most technically gifted players on the team. But like I said, I haven't followed too much since then. And but what I have heard is that he hasn't quite lived up to expectations.
Well, I think the biggest deficit, and that was quite apparent when he made the move from Leverkusen, when we sort of sifted through the statistics. It was quite clear from the beginning that he is not one who features prominently in any pressing stats. And you can see this very much on the football field, that his work against the ball is sort of the biggest criterion, and something he really needs to work on. The good news is that under Rose, Dortmund play for the most part in the 4-4-2 with the diamond shape, and he will play as a number 8. And Rose sees him as a player in that position, and I think this suits him really well. Obviously, he did play on the wing as well for Leverkusen. I know that he did so as well, especially in the beginning for Dortmund, but it's not his strongest position in my view.
Agreed.
Yeah. Anyway, that's sort of something I'm looking forward to, how Julian Brandt will fare against Leverkusen. Now, what kind of game are we going to expect? Because usually these games are, between Dortmund and Leverkusen especially, are very hectic, very chaotic, a lot of end-to-end stuff, a lot of high lines and balls over the top of high lines or through balls and whatnot. Do you think we'll have that, or will it be a very cagey affair where both teams will try to secure their own goal first?
No, I think it's going to definitely be the former. I think, for one, I think this is an opportunity for the new trainer. So I wanted to make a statement, and I think, be playing at home, Leverkusen is going to want to start on the front foot. And I do think, that worries me a little bit, but because any mistake at the back can be immediately punished by the likes of Reus and Haaland and Bellingham, for that matter. But I think it's, for what it's worth, I tipped it's going to be a 2-2 match, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be at least one fluky or weird goal. I think it could be 2-2 or perhaps a higher score. But I don't necessarily know that I can predict a winner, but it should be high flying.
Yeah, how error-prone have Bayer Leverkusen been so far? I mean, obviously we've seen this one goal they conceded against Augsburg, but sometimes you have a really good start to the season result-wise, but you can already see the underlying issues. That was, for example, very prominent under Peter Bosch when Dortmund started. I think they had like 5 wins in a row. But everyone and their dog basically could already see what's to come. So a lot of counter-attacking goals by the opponent. Do you have something, a similar feeling with Leverkusen in that regard? Because I'll be honest, I haven't seen that much of them yet. But from the podcasts that I'm listening to, I'm hearing a lot of positive things about the recent development in Leverkusen.
Yeah, I think one thing that Seoane has really managed to do well is bring some stability to the back line. And I mentioned Bakker and Frimpong, who are playing extremely well. And one of the ways in which you can put the other team on the back foot is by having your fullbacks attack and not have to play that defensive role potentially, if you do it correctly. I think that Leverkusen has had the back line, especially, we've given up 2 goals this season in 3 matches. One of those goals against Augsburg, like you had noted, was kind of weak. So we'll say one proper goal that we've given up. So obviously the results are there in the defense, but at the same time, it's not the case that they've faced Erling Haaland yet. They haven't faced a team of this caliber. Borussia Mönchengladbach, who might have been preseason the team among the first 3 that you would have said, well, that's going to be a real test. Turned out not to be, and it doesn't seem to be the case.
It might have been. You just passed it with flying colors.
Maybe, and I do think from that match, like I had mentioned earlier, that's the approach we have to take with Dortmund. It has to be aggressive. It has to be, I'm not saying try to injure someone, but as you noted, everybody's on their last ligament and tendon. I'm sure Seoane is preaching going hard on the tackles, at least initially. And that's going to have to be probably part of the philosophy to stopping most of Dortmund's team. But again, there seems to be very little that stops Haaland, and it'll be a real test for everybody, basically, to see how they deal with that. And there's nobody of his caliber that the Leverkusen have faced yet.
Yeah, if you try to break Haaland, I may warn you, Joshua Kimmich tried that once and he was out injured. I think he
I don't think anybody's going to try to do
that. So,
Yeah, I remember that. I don't think anybody has nobody has the just pure body to do that. But it's going. But I do think it's going to be physical in other areas of the pitch for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It also would be silly for Leverkusen to not do it. Just look at what Hoffenheim did to Dortmund. I think that plan worked quite well. So I would certainly do that as well. I mean, for Dortmund, it's obviously also the biggest test of the season yet. The one in Freiburg, they already lost, and Hoffenheim was an okay, formidable opponent, but they're freaking Hoffenheim. They're like the gray mouse of the Bundesliga. They're always going to be a boring mid-table team that can upset the big teams in the Bundesliga, but that's about it. Bayer Leverkusen is the real rival for the Champions League spots. So, I think a point for Dortmund at the Bayer Arena would already be a very positive result, especially considering this is going to be the first Champions League week. Dortmund play Besiktas on Wednesday, and then they will play on Sunday again against Union Berlin. So it's going to be a very tricky week with 2 away games in Leverkusen and in Istanbul. So given the long list of injuries and the players that are available, maybe not in their best form yet, I don't really know what to make of this game. And Dortmund are usually a surprise back, especially on the road. You can't always count on them. So if it's a 2-2 draw, as you just said, I think that's a wonderful result for the All Black and Yellows. So I think we can knock it on the head here, Eric, unless you have anything else to profess.
No, I think that wraps it up.
Very well. Then please tell our listeners where to follow you on the old Twitter, and of course how to subscribe to the flagship that is the Neverkusen Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. You can find all of that information basically at our Twitter. It's at Neverkusen Pod. And everyone's personal Twitter handle is in the bio there, or on a pinned tweet, I should say. So just have a look there. You'll see me, SchnicksB04. And our podcast is basically downloadable from all platforms. And great. Thanks for having me, Stefan. This was a great discussion as always. And I'm totally psyched. Really looking forward to this match on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't know. I have some cautious pessimism this time. I don't know if it's warranted or not. We'll discuss it on Monday. And until then, as always, everyone out there, thank you for listening. You can follow me at Stefan Butzko. You can follow all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to subscribe to this podcast, please do that on iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. And if you want to become a patron and support us financially, go to patreon.com/theyellowwall, and we shall be back with another episode to review the Leverkusen match and preview the Besiktas game. Until then, goodbye.